Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about Newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And I don't want the ending of Succession spoiled.
No,
that's why I started the show. I can make you stop talking about anything just by starting the show. With our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Back for another week.
You and I are going to talk. Offline, you and I are going to talk. George, continue.
Okay, so this is a podcast about newsy type stuff and things. The reason we're talking about the ending of Succession, which ended a little while ago, is because for a completely unrelated issue, Rupert Murdoch has decided that he is stepping down as the chair of Fox and News Corp. And I don't know why, but Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead seems to be going around and around in my head for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know what it's related to. But
not so much, man. Not so much Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead, but Ding Dong, the Witch is spending more time with their family.
Ding Dong, the Witch is decided to spend more time in one of his many expensive properties.
Yeah, Ding Dong the Witch is very nearly dead.
So you heard that right. Rupert Murdoch, duffel bag of shit and 21st century's greatest villain, is stepping down as the chair of Fox and News Corp, ending a 7-decade run as one of the world's most transformative and controversial media moguls. That's a very diplomatic language that you're using there, The Guardian. I'm pretty sure that's been your meal ticket for the last 10 to 15 years, mate. It's criticizing and critiquing that transformative media mogul in particular, but that's his media properties, but that's fine.
Are we seeing, he's not dead yet? But are we seeing the beginning of the the kinds of obituary sort of talk that we'll see when he eventually dies? We've all spent decades platforms like The Guardian and all that have hosted a lot of content about the cravenness and right-wing chicanery of all of News Corp and all this sort of stuff. But we're seeing the beginning of and just one of the, you've really got to admire just what he achieved.
His business acumen and what a transformative figure and
titan of the media industry.
So the final season of Succession, basically, is what we're saying.
Titan of being incredibly pure fucking evil. Well, look, swings and roundabouts, because yes, as a result of Rupert Murdoch, we've had a bunch of incredibly damaging media publications erode the public trust. And
in themselves and systems around the world.
In institutions, in democracy, wasted about 20 years questioning the validity of the established science of climate change and the fact that it's anthropogenic, that humans have a causal effect in climate change. But on the other hand, we did get 4 seasons of Succession. So swings and roundabouts, it is a very good show. I'm 2 seasons in, no spoilers. Okay, thanks, bye.
Honestly, worth it.
Worth it.
Worth it. Succession was great.
Look, when the climate refugees, being us, are fighting over the last drops of water in the water wars, it will say, look, it was all worth it, because Succession, that's theme song in Succession. Da 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 dun dun. Fantastic. A+. Give the guy a Grammy. It was all worth it.
While you and I are rolling in the dirt as I try to pry the last canteen of water
Unhand
from your
me!
hands and my foot's on your neck, I'll be shouting, was it crossed out or was it underlined, George?
What a capacious bag.
So Murdoch's 92.
Yep.
So he's going to become
just
chairman.
a mere teenager in Congress, which is why he's stepping down, not to spend more time with his family, but to run for Dianne Feinstein's Senate seat in California. Because the man is a spring chicken. He's got his whole life ahead of him, which is true, actually, which is always true if you think about it.
So there's 2 corporations that make up. There's Fox and there's News Corp. So he'll become the honorary chairman, but it's just a honorary title. So Lachlan, his son, Lachlan will become the successor. Which Lachlan's the one that loves a puffy vest, for clarity, not the one that withdrew from the family because climate change. Disagreements about how it was being represented.
James was the one who.
James, yes,
James
was. Yeah. Well, at least from the business aspect of it.
I'd be honestly surprised if it was James that then took over. I think like retreating from the family over the climate change thing doesn't exactly shout,
kind of a big one.
I'm going to interview for that job.
Well, here's the thing: is like,
involved.
but there's a trust that controls everything. So, and each one of the 4 kids has a vote. Now, once Rupert's out of the picture, it really will be up to the 4 remaining kids as to like who becomes. It's just literally just like a power struggle out of succession as to like who becomes the leader and takes over.
Almost like Succession was based on
the murder. Yeah, but obviously, like they, it's something we can't confirm that it's based on any particular billionaire media mogul family.
No. Certainly not the one that is
lots of
extremely similar that exists. No, certainly not.
So yeah, it's kind of like Lachlan's taking over now, but it's sort of like once Rupert dies, all bets are off, sort of thing, as to who actually is going to end up in control of it. So yeah, well, look, ideas for a season 5, but. They did. There was a bit of a screed that Rupert Murdoch wrote, was a note to staff that was first reported in the Wall Street Journal, which is owned by them. He wrote, "For my entire professional life, I have been engaged daily with news and ideas." Technically true, and that will not change. But the time is right for me to take on different roles. There also was a section of the of this note where he said that Lachlan was a passionate and principled leader who can take the companies into the future. Obviously, with James having left, he was the only possible leader. So I guess that makes him.
Weirdly enough, he became even more passionate and more principled after his brother left.
Yes. Well, and here's the thing: it's sort of the idea is that Lachlan's the one. It could actually end up being worse than Rupert in that he sort of he drinks the Kool-Aid. Like Rupert Murdoch has always seemed like yes, he had his ideological kind of like little pet projects like climate change and, sort of breaking democracy. But at the end of the day, like, he wasn't really on board with Trump conceptually until like viewers started leaving in droves. And then they were like, it's really about the money at the end of the day with Rupert. You know what I mean? Like he has his ideological pet projects, but at the end of the day, it's all about the green, right? That's all he cares about. Lachlan, on the other hand, does seem like an actual ideologue, someone who's drunk the Kool-Aid, who actually believes the nonsense that they're selling, which could be worse. But the thing that I found very interesting about all of this is that there was a bit where, in this note from Rupert Murdoch stepping down, it was talking about, the failure of elites and, sort of taking aim at the elites. Within democracies, within countries that were sort of keeping people down, and I find that I was interested to wonder about that, because I was wondering where he penned this. Was it in his home in Mayfair, which is a very expensive part of London, that he penned this note, or did he pen this note maybe in his New York headquarters on Fifth Avenue, which he bought for $44 million in 2005? Or was it maybe in his apartment on Fifth Avenue that he renovated recently, including a $400,000 gym? Or do you think it was maybe at his house in Oyster Bay, which is worth $10.5 million? Or maybe his villa in Beverly Hills? I'm just curious which one of these locations he penned his screed against the elites. This Oxford-educated billionaire who owns a media company. I'm just curious. Or maybe it's his yacht, the Rose Harty, or maybe his Boeing 737 jet that he penned this screed from. I'm curious because, I'm just trying to get the setting as to like where he's penning this screed against the elites that are controlling everything. What's the setting
come from?
Yeah,
or maybe it's his home in Melbourne. And where him and his mother have lived for 82 years, which looks like an estate rather than a home. Or maybe it's his apartment in Soho. It's maybe, who knows? But
his tax return.
It's a Business Insider article. But what we do know about Rupert Murdoch, though, is that he's a man of the people, and he's after those bloody elites that are trying to come after you and your. What's a banana? $10?
It's really It's a very Tim Gurner sort of thing of like, these bloody elites, they all suck. Not you guys, though. No,
guys,
not you. Not talking about
not
you.
me.
No. You love you guys. Love me as well. Yeah. I'm
Love
great.
us.
All the rest of them suck.
Yeah.
So it's all yeah. It's the end of an era, and as you mentioned, with Lachlan taking over with his Kool-Aid fanaticism at the beginning of a whole new scary one. But yeah. Yay, I guess. Like, it's one of those, like, hurrah, the king is dead, but yeah, also the king has a dipshit son who's now the king.
And despair.
Which is why monarchy, terrible system.
Not a great system.
It's literally just, the whole idea of succession and that there is a family member that just inherits and succeeds and just gets everything is just like inherently flawed as a system of ruling. I'd say a system of government. Yeah. It's not technically a government, but it may as well be for all the influence that it peddles.
But yeah, like, just to jump on the bandwagon of all these obituary-esque kind of takes on his career, I guess we also do have to pay respect to our longest-serving Australian Prime Minister.
Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah.
May as well.
I remember that Malcolm Turnbull had an anecdote where, I think it was in 2016 or something, when Malcolm was trying to push something through that was fairly unpopular with the Liberal Party. And Rupert called him. Rupert just rang him up and was like, don't do this. And then obviously Malcolm Turnbull, being a Liberal Prime Minister, was like, well, with respect, you don't get to tell me what to do. And he's like, and then since then, Rupert's basically gone after anything Turnbull does with a shotgun to try and sort of smear it, I guess. But
wow, I never thought Malcolm Turnbull was that naive. It's like, you don't get to tell me what to do. Like, that is literally your job as the leader of the Liberal Party. You do what I tell you.
Yeah, well, what's the point of having my propaganda apparatus if I don't own you?
Yeah, right. Speaking of former prime ministers, I did see like one of the first things that Lachlan Murdoch has said that he's done as like leader of as CEO or whatever of Fox Corp, etc., was to like nominate Tony Abbott to the board of directors.
Great, and good.
Yeah, cool.
Jesus, what?
Yeah, like, fuck, I should have sent that to you guys.
That's what the world needs. More Tony Abbott. There's not enough Tony Abbott voice in this world.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Here we go. Yeah, nominated to board of Fox Corporation. I don't know exactly sort of what position he'd have, but
Chief Onion Eater.
Well, yeah, they do have a lot of onions up there. So you got to get through them.
Yeah, well, the oldest one just stepped down, so
that's true. A lot of layers.
Stinky.
That didn't really go anywhere. But yeah, so woohoo. Yep, cool. Tony Abbott being
I did not know that.
So I mean, there's not a whole lot of detail other than that, but I think that's just the horror story writes itself.
Oh my god. It's like, and you've got Credlin obviously working for Sky News as well, so it's anyway. An ecosystem. But speaking of ecosystems and nature and the weather and other bits and pieces, El Nino's back, baby.
Oh, I just want to do a celebratory succession. A fuck off for Rupert Murdoch, if that's okay. It's just
was that it, or do another
that's
one?
It. That's all. Fuck off. Okay, right. Fuck off.
What succession?
I wish him the worst.
It's very good.
Yeah, very good.
The Northern Hemisphere has been in El Nino, the sort of big dry, as it sort of translates to roughly, for a while. But the Bureau of Meteorology in Australia has been holding off announcing it for the Southern Hemisphere. However, they have now.
Sorry, Adam. You say the Bureau of Meteorology. What I think you mean is the Bureau.
Nah, they gave up on that. Remember, that lasted like 48 hours?
Not even a day. It felt like.
Stop calling us the bomb. Please call us the Bureau.
No. You're gonna call us the Bureau.
Like, you don't get to decide your own nickname, fellas.
Yeah. No, anyway. I refuse to be known as Bomb and only as El Jefe or the Chief. Big cheese.
Yeah, big cheese. But yeah, they've finally gotten on the El Nino bandwagon.
So yeah, basically they've noticed that there are two major climate drivers that are linked to sort of hot and dry conditions. They're officially underway. So obviously El Nino is one of them. The other one is called the Indian Ocean Dipole, or IOD, which are both climate drivers. So they sort of exacerbate existing conditions, I guess, if you will. Cool. We've obviously come out of in Australia, we've come out of a wet one, as it were. Not an antibacterial wipe. It's a wet series of weather events.
You stayed up late thinking of that, or?
Yeah, I did. I got to bed around 2:30.
Nice.
Yep, good. But yeah, so it just means that summer over the next several years in Australia is going to be hot as balls, and expect some bushfires, expect dust, expect all the fun things that make life good. But on the flip side, great beach weather and great weather for weddings for those people getting married out there, like myself.
Kind of a great, in the sense that you might not get rained out, but you might get 40-degree days where you're in fucking 3-piece suits.
Mine's in April, so you're not wearing 3-piece suits, so you'll be okay. It's fine.
Wonderful.
So you want to wear a 3-piece suit? I mean, we haven't talked about suits yet, but yeah.
No, not at all. But yeah, I don't know. I found it funny, this kind of, much like sort of the series of shootings that have been happening here in Sydney that they've just now decided like organised crime related. Then
you think that the gangland shootings in Sydney are actually gangland shootings?
Hang on, you telling me that all these washed up Italian blokes in their mid-50s hanging out in front of gambling establishments that get shot up? You telling me that these might be organised crime related? I don't believe you for a second.
I think, like, not to derail it too much, but when one guy gets like shot in his car, who's the head of an organised crime syndicate, and then people from an opposing gang are shot in another location a few days later.
Nah, there's nothing to it, mate. You're drawing strings. You're doing some bird law there. Yeah, I don't think those two things are related at all. Anyway, please ignore me while I drag these body bags into Sydney Harbour. Ignore the concrete shoes.
Yeah, those things sounded.
It's a Channel 9 are just like,
Yeah, those all when police finally said, we think these there's a war going on between the organised crime stuff. I was like, I thought that by the time there was the second shooting. Anyway, the reason I bring that up here is because I found it quite amazing. Like, this article was sort of predicted. The articles about the bomb releasing this announcement were at the start of this week when, it was fucking like 35 here in Sydney. And so they're just like, hey guys, we think we're heading in for the overhot big dry. And I'm shouting out my windows, you fucking think? Like, it is September and it's 35 degrees.
Yeah. So apparently the Bureau of Meteorology has a sort of a more conservative standard in terms of like publicly announcing it. But yeah, like last week in Melbourne, it was 25 degrees in the middle of September for 5 days in a row, just sunny and I was kind of looking around.
Nice. It was lovely. It was the best.
Just looking around like, I don't know, like late August, early September, the cherry blossoms have already come and gone. I was just kind of like, that doesn't seem normal. Like this seems concerned. And the people are like, day for it, mate, day for it, absolute fucking day for it, mate. And it's like, yes.
I've definitely been drinking more since.
We're gonna be saying day for it as the world burns.
Day for it, mate, absolutely day for it. You see that koala burst into flames? Fucking day for it, mate. But
day for it as the Titanic sinks.
Yeah, it's just like you see them playing the violins. It's just day for it as the Titanic sinks, just explodes into the boiling ocean.
There's already been a few bushfires flaring up over the last week or two. There was one in Tassie around Coles Bay. I think there was one in New South Wales. I was put on a catastrophic fire danger alert the other day.
Oh, yeah, it's South Coast, like Batemans Bay kind of South Coast area where like those crazy fires happened in late 2019 and it's like Black Summer and all that jazz. I had a bit of like a sort of whiplash back to that kind of time because they were doing a lot of burn-offs around Sydney up here. So there were a few days where it was like, keep all your windows shut. It's the air quality's fucked. And like, oh,
yeah, cool and normal.
This.
Just a cool, normal country.
I mean, I guess they would do it. That was because they were intentionally burning some stuff to try and make sure there's no some crazy fires later. But
and that window like, apparently of the sort of burn offs and things like that is getting shorter and shorter because that turnaround from like cold and wet, like it was 3 weeks ago, to like way too hot to start burning stuff. That window is just getting shorter and shorter. So it's not even the sort of critique that conservatives tend to levy whenever there's bushfires, like back burning. Okay, it's the back burning. We need to do more back burning, but the bloody lefties, the bloody Greens, don't want us to burn half the. It's like the window for doing that is now like 2 weeks. It used to be months where you had sort of like milder, dry weather where you could do that kind of back burning before the like crazy heat kicked in. And now it was like, I got through like a season and a half of American Dad and it's like summer now. Like basically that's that window has gotten extremely short.
You know, it's a sort of, as you said, it's the whole concept of backburning. You can do key areas which may protect particular bits of infrastructure. So, for instance, you might backburn around, say, a major dam or water catchment area if you want to make sure that those assets are protected. But you can't backburn the entire fucking country. It doesn't work like that.
It's a big country. Despite what they say,
it's very dangerous to do it, right?
Despite what people say about, fuck off, we're full. It's a real big country and there's not a lot of people in it. So there's a lot of stuff that we would need to burn in order to make the whole country safe from bushfires. It's not practical.
And also we have like one of our native species of trees loves fire.
Yeah.
Oh boy, eucalyptus trees love fire. Yeah. Like they are good burners. They love burning.
I was reading that actually like eucalyptus trees have been planted
all over the world.
Of the globe.
Yeah.
Did you see the same article? I don't know. I didn't realize this. I was like that eucalyptus are actually everywhere at the moment, like in Spain and other different countries, and they're not designed for those conditions.
Colonization, man. Like, when people came over here, they also pinched a whole bunch of seeds and all that sort of stuff because they were like, oh, these trees are pretty, but also they love burning. So now that we're, now that the weather's putting its whole, like, El Nussi into it, there's all these really flammable trees in heaps of parts of the world. Like, all the parts of, like, California and through Italy and Spain and stuff like that.
It's the first tree to ever go viral on TikTok.
Yeah, like the fact that they've been planting all these eucalyptus trees in other parts of the world, and now those parts of the world are sweltering in the high heat. Yeah, they're like the native flora around there.
I do think it is
normally not be so flammable, but because for the last 200 years they've been planting eucalyptus trees, it's getting worse.
I do think it is wild that we don't involve Indigenous communities more in this whole sort of like land management situation. Like it really seems crazy to me that it's like, hey, we've got 60,000 years of continuous Aboriginal history here in the, with connection to this land in particular. Do we maybe want to ask them? No. Yeah. We've got a couple of park rangers and some Bunsen burners. We'll figure it out. I don't know.
Well, it's almost like they need a voice to Parliament.
Yeah, if only there was a way of communicating that kind of information to the federal Parliament making policy.
I mean, I'm sure there are, like in certain states, it would be different between each state. I'm sure there are particular links potentially, but between Indigenous groups and fire authorities. But I guess the point being is that it's too late now. Like I don't know, particularly on the East Coast where there is, and the far southwest, there is so much forested area that like. It's not.
It's just going to go up every couple of years. This is the plan now. Is that like, hopefully you don't live in a region that's going to be on fire because every couple of years we're going to have a Black Saturday. That's how it's going to be going forward, basically.
Yeah. Particularly if you get high wind as well, it's it's bad. So anyway, El Nino is here, and look, it should last. The particular event should last between 9 months to a year. However, I think last time we had El Ninos happening, they sort of recursively happened. Like there was like 5 in a row or something.
We had three La Ninas in a row last.
Yeah, I don't know where I got this number from. I thought they kind of happened on like 4 yearly cycles ish.
Well, I think when it gets to winter, like the event itself dies off, but then it'll come back again for the summer season once the globe tilts, basically. So
I'm just imagining it's like tick, tick, tick. It's suddenly like November 1st, and the Earth goes to like the side. It's like El Nino, bitch.
That's literally what happens. Like the Earth tilts up, and then all of a sudden, the southern hemisphere is staring directly into the sun. It's a lot of fun.
We've got a friend of the show, Polyverse, writing in. I live in regional Western Australia. It feels like half the state here burns every summer. Well, the thing, mate. If you burn both halves, then there won't be anything left to burn next time around. Stupid. Why would you only burn half at a time?
Yeah. And that was scary as well.
That was a joke. Obviously, it's very sad when things burn down. Obviously, thoughts and prayers.
It is, and it's crazy. Like you have a state like Western Australia, which is huge, right? Like it's bigger than most countries.
Adam, we're full. The whole country's full, and we couldn't possibly take another immigrant. I couldn't. Fuck off, I'm full. I couldn't possibly have another bite.
How do you have the personnel to manage those things? I think since the last Black Summer events, they have got more firefighting aircraft in, and they've had a look at it and how they can coordinate that kind of thing better. But
it's a big old country. It's the size of half a continent.
Australia?
You know what I mean? Like it's a big country. Yeah. There's a lot of shit in here.
Yeah, big fuck off country populated with some of the most flammable shit you've ever seen.
Yeah, and there's a lot of hot air being generated by Alan Jones and
most
Tony
coming out of
others.
Billy. Oh,
hello. Polyverse says make way for more mining if everything burns down. So that's
swings and roundabouts.
We do two things in this country. Okay, we dig things out of the ground, and second thing in a list. Okay,
we set it on fire.
That's it. Yeah. Someone else sets it. We sell it to them, and then they set it on fire. So,
it is a big country, and we do want more people to come to this country. And Victoria, Dan Andrews.
Love it. Do we though? Like, fuck all. A lot of the policy I see is quite the opposite. It's all like, we want more people. No, not you. No, don't come from there. And oh boy, you're trained as what now? We don't want you.
Yeah.
Well, economically speaking, we do need them because it's the only thing keeping us out of recession. That'll be the next article in a bit. We'll come back to that. But what it also means is we need places for people to live. And there is, as it turns out, because there has been a mentality of fuck off, we're full. No one's been building anything for the last 10 years. And Dan Andrews, Premier of Victoria.
Oh, Daddy Dandrews.
You can't blame him for thinking big, but he has big policy ideas. He likes to build shit.
He takes big swings.
Dan likes to swing for the fences. It doesn't always hit as the COVID inquiry will not be reporting on because so they've announced that there's a COVID inquiry. This is a bit of a sidetrack. And one of the things that they're definitely not going to be focused on is like unilateral actions from the states and the federal government. I was like, but then what will they focus on? We're doing a COVID inquiry, but it's going to be about Deborah. Okay.
Deborah from accounts.
Yeah.
So basically, Dan Andrews has announced a couple of housing policies. Basically, they're going to be adding a 7.5% levy on short stay accommodation, such as Airbnb, stays, those kind of things, in order to, and that money will then be used to directly fund more social housing. So I guess they're sort of, after the federal government's announcement for more funding to the states to increase social housing, they're going to, they're starting to form some policy around how they're going to use that now. The other thing he said is they want to try and build 800,000 homes in the next decade.
It seems like a lot.
Which is it's a lot of. That
seems like
homes,
a lot,
man. And a lot of these will be, multi sort of medium density to high density dwellings.
So like duplexes, that sort of thing, or like
make better use of space, I guess, is the main thing. But also using some areas in regional areas as well, which is something that I personally believe is a good idea. You need to have.
Or go fuck off and live in one then.
No, I like my beach.
Oh, you're in a city, so killed a fucking.
I'm renting. I don't own it.
Okay, whatever. But I personally think lots of other people should go and live in regional centres. Not me, of course. My inner city coastal scumbreed wanker, latte sipping Bayside lifestyle. No, not me.
One sugar, thank you very much. So that's the plan. As to how they're going to pay for a bunch of this, and with what staff and with what resources, no one seems to know yet.
You and what army?
I think at the same time, while they're doing this, they're also laying off a shitload of people from the public service. And obviously there's a skill shortage as well, with an already struggling construction
lots of budgetary concerns in Victorian state government level.
Well, it's because they've been spending way too much money.
They've been spending
over the last
a lot of
10
money.
years. And borrowing it to be clear as well,
which is fine in a low interest rate environment. And then obviously, since interest rates are creeping up, then obviously the cost of servicing that debt is now becoming increasingly more expensive. But having said that, like I would not give back the level crossing removals or any of the big projects that they've done. Like I think they've all been worthwhile projects.
Again, like big swings.
Yeah.
Swings. Yep. Yeah. We're doing it.
These things will pay off over
how
time.
How unpopular this is, I'm doing it. Yeah.
We need another 800,000 homes in Victoria. Like we really do. But like you got to make sure
homes they've been. Sorry.
No, I was just going. You just got to make sure it's properly paid for. So I guess a levy on short stay accommodation is good because it sort of takes that money that, like, the more severe the problem is, which is exacerbated by the short-term accommodation, because that short-term so basically, if for those of you who aren't familiar with Airbnb, it's you sort of get an apartment or you get some sort of property and then you're renting it out like a hotel, right? So that means effectively those properties are off the market for people who would be long-term renters or potential owners, if they could afford to buy it. So it basically takes that supply out of the property pool. So if that's one of the drivers of the housing supply crisis that we have, and people are making money off that, like seems like a good policy to me to be able to tax that money, because the more profitable that is, the more of a problem they're making housing affordability by having the short stay accommodation, the more money then gets raised in this 7.5% levy to then fund
housing.
address the symptoms of the problem, which is affordable housing. So I think it's like a smart policy. But
I think the question is, does that just therefore mean that Airbnb has just upped their prices by 7.5%?
I mean,
I guess, sure.
Yeah.
But I guess the government's then still getting
their money, right? So it's kind of like, the government gets their little.
That's shit for people like us. Like, if you are wanting to rent out an Airbnb, then that's shit for me. But they are still going to be like, in terms of the policy, they're still going to be getting their money, and it goes up. Just that would then just be a dick move from Airbnb or like people or like Stays or whatever.
Well, it's not, to be clear, the people that set the pricing are not Airbnb specifically. Like Airbnb gets their percentage from the customer, but it's the person who's renting it out,
right? Like it's the Airbnb is just a platform for you to list
exactly
your short-term,
and they charge a commission, whatever it is, X amount of percent. Right. But you, the owner of the property, are the one that is setting the prices
and getting most of the money. Probably
you set the you get the vast majority of the money. I think when we did Airbnb back at the apartments, it was like 3.5% or something, which compared to like Booking.com, which is like 15%. Obviously substantially better. And
how they can get that Melissa McCarthy money to help her in all the ads,
aid the growth of the company. If they're if you go, okay, well, the two commissions are that vastly different. Okay, well, I might go on Airbnb as opposed to Booking.com. But the person who owns the apartment is the one setting the rates, and the rates are kind of dictated by the market. Like if you've got a big conference in town, obviously you can put your rates up more, because it's a sort of supply and demand dynamic pricing kind of deal. But
the free market.
That invisible hand is so just cold. It's very cold. It's grabbing my nether regions. The invisible hand of the market almost feels like someone else's hand.
I'm sure the hotel industry are very happy with the announcement because it puts
they'd be thrilled.
Probably they'd be thrilled. So the other thing they're doing as part of the housing sort of announcements they made the other day, they're going to demolish 44 of the state's high-rise public housing towers. If you live in Melbourne, you will know that there are these sort of brown monoliths that appear from various suburbs, and a lot of them were built in like the 50s and 60s and aren't particularly up to code, shall we say.
Sorry, when you say brown monoliths, it just makes me think of like Mongolian throat singing, like all hail the monolith. The monolith is good. The monolith is great. All hail the monolith.
They have definitely served a purpose, but they are going to have to. They are going to replace all of them. They're going to demolish them and rebuild them.
Yeah, they're not fit for purpose.
Yeah. So
where are those people gonna live while they're?
Well, we've rented them a bunch of Airbnbs, so it should be all right.
Like that's the thing of like, oh, good. Like so, yeah, great. You're knocking them down and rebuilding them, but all the people who live in them aren't like it's social housing. Like those are people, who I don't think, will easily just be able to just live somewhere else. Like,
I'm sure, like they're also building a bunch of new stuff. So I think the concept being is you'll do one or two at a time, and you'll shuffle people around. It'll be inconvenient, but it needs to happen.
It'll be inconvenient, but it needs to happen. Dan Andrews.
the story of Andrews.
The motto of the Andrews government.
I was driving into the city yesterday, and I was just like, along St Kilda Road, and I was like, for fuck's sake, can they finish this fucking tunnel? I am so sick of the roads being blocked because of the fucking tunnel. Please, God, finish the works. But they are going to get them done, I think, by 2025. So another year of pain and we'll be okay.
It'll be inconvenient, but it needs to happen.
Interesting thing with this story, it's the last thing I'll touch on before we move on, is that another thing that he announced or sort of had a bit of a go at was the state government has released a list of all the councils that are allegedly holding up planning.
Wow.
And they basically named and shamed
a shit list.
A shit list of the councils in Victoria.
I didn't hear about this.
That have been sort of
Okay, so here's who doesn't want you to have affordable housing. Barry, Carol, Jeff,
it was
Armand.
City of Yarra, like Stonington, Monash, Whitehorse, all of these guys have, and I've dealt with these councils personally for my work, and I can tell you they're fucking slow, because they've all got crazy planning overlays. You've got to protect all the trees. You put a submission in, and they're like, no, you haven't thought about this, and so that the planning laws are
got to preserve the character of the neighborhood, and you can't have too much density.
The neighborhood,
exactly.
So I mean, Andrews is specifically talking about multi-unit, like multi-dwelling applications, which require planning. But, a lot of all the councils then put out a response. They're like, no, actually, we've approved 96% of them. But what they don't tell you is they also took 6 months longer to approve any of those things than the legislation. They may take like 60 days or something under the legislation to like turn around a planning application. A lot of these councils... And to be fair, there's they do have resourcing issues in some of these councils. The planning departments aren't set up to deal with lots and lots and lots of applications at once. But it was really interesting that the state government basically went, these are the problems, just pointed the finger at all these councils who were like, well, they've got 3 people in our building planning department. There's Greg, there's Susan and Carol. And Greg, Susan and Carol can't approve thousands of homes a year. They don't have the capability to do that. So, it's another question of, well, yes, councils probably need to step up. If you want to build more homes, councils do need to step up in processing those. But
it's interesting.
It's not a simple just get more people. It's like there's a money question there as well.
It's an interesting perspective. I wonder why there isn't more of a focus on having those kind of departments properly resourced, given the fact that councils make money off rates, and the way to get rates is to have more ratepayers in your district, right? Like if you have more people in there, there's more people giving you money. Like that makes sense to me.
If you go to City of Casey, their planning department is huge. because they are a growth area. They're set up because they know they're putting in 6 subdivisions next week, right?
Right.
The Council of Casey, they're definitely the one you want to model yourselves on.
But the closer into the city, especially where it's built up,
they're like, no, we're good. Thank you.
Well, yeah. But also, like, there are laws in place, and the council's like, well, we're just executing the laws. So the question really is probably like, well, should you change the planning scheme? Should you change some of the laws in some of these areas that would allow for development?
And that's what they're trying to do, right? On a state level, is basically say, cut through some of this local council red tape. But the reason the red tape is there, and this is something Ezra Klein has talked about, they've got a very similar kind of problem in America as well, is that, in these left-wing, Democrat-controlled states like California, they've got some of the worst housing problems. And he goes, well, why? If everyone's so focused on having like fair and equitable housing, right? If we're all lefties and we're all on board with that conceptually, why are we so bad at it? Why isn't this happening? And so much of it is to do with, people. It's like there's NIMBYism, right? Not my backyard. The same people that don't want a 40-story high-rise for housing challenged people in their backyard are the same people that also don't want like a duplex on their street. I remember when I lived in Malvern, for example, when we were renting there, both there was this street, I can't remember where it was exactly, but somewhere in Malvern, where there was a planned, I think it was like a medium density
townhouses kind of thing.
A couple of townhouses. Like when I say a couple, I mean like 2 or 3 on the block where one house was. And there were signs all up and down the street of people putting signs in front of their houses saying no to the development at 19 Wattle Tree or whatever. Like,
oh my God.
Just like getting real aggro about the value of their street, and would be like bringing the value down and say no, and we need to protest. And so there's all these processes that have evolved over time to protect people and give people a voice and stop, building that happens in a way that doesn't respect the environment and doesn't respect whatever Indigenous owners, doesn't, like there have been all these things that have been done with the best of intentions in order to provide an environment that gives voice to the people who have been previously cut out of those decisions. But then what happens is the moneyed interests then turn around and use those mechanisms as a way of gumming up the works to prevent things from being built because, for their own interests, because like who has time to go to a city council planning meeting and like advocate their interests? Well, it's not like the disabled mother of 3 who is trying to provide for her kids and like can't afford groceries. Like that person does not have the time, resources, like available cognitive bandwidth to go and like deal with a city council planning meeting. The people who have the bandwidth are like property developers and moneyed interests, and the people who want to take advantage of the situation, or people who live in the community and want to keep it exactly the way it is for their property prices. So it's like the systems that we've created to help give a voice to the people who are disadvantaged are actually those same processes that are being turned against themselves and prevent us being able to. And I almost don't blame people for wanting, like the reason I live in a very far flung suburb here in Melbourne, right? It's green, it's leafy. The block sizes are pretty large compared to some of those inner city suburbs. I like the character of my neighborhood. That's why we chose to buy here. Right, is all we could afford, but there was a reason that we chose to buy here as opposed to other far-flung suburbs. So I almost don't blame people for wanting to keep the character of their neighborhood as it is. If someone turned around to me and said, hey, we're building a block of 60 apartments next door to your house, I'd be like, well, bro, why did I buy a property 35 kilometers away from the city? Like I did it. Part of the reason was to have some peace and quiet, and this is the suburb that we chose was for that reason. So I'm sympathetic to it, but it's also just like, we need more housing. And the only way to do that is to like really expedite this process. And I'm sorry, a bunch of rich people, you're going to get your feelings hurt. A bunch of duck-billed fucking woodpeckers are probably going to have their trees taken down and replaced and put elsewhere. Like things need to happen, and they need to happen really fast over the course of the next 5-10 years in order for us to avoid this housing crisis becoming like a really serious problem And we're already seeing it with homeless populations increasing over the last year or two.
Yeah.
Like it's already a problem, but it will become a legitimate crisis in the next couple of years if we don't do something to counteract it, right?
I think it depends where I mean, there's appropriate development, there's not appropriate development. Like,
Sure.
A block of 60 apartments is probably not appropriate for a residential street. But could you do
a couple of duplexes?
Couple of duplexes, you could do 3 lots, small units, small housing code developments on a long block. You could do a couple of townhouses. And for developers, it means you're not going to make as much money, right? Your return on investment for that is not as good. But by the same token, it still keeps the character of the street. It's a win-win for everyone. But the problem is, I had one just down the road from me where they wanted to put in 35. It was a 3-story. They wanted to put in 35 2 and 1 bedroom apartments, I think, from memory. And that's and by doing that, they then had to knock down a bunch of heritage listed houses. So, I mean, on 3 separate lots, and they wanted to then combine it into one block. Which, there's already a bunch of other apartment dwellings, with 10, 20, 30 on my street. So do you go, well, or do you go, is that a reasonable development? And these are the key problems for these council planning departments is you've got those muddied interests. You've got one part of the council going, it'd be great to have those rates. And you've got the other part of them, you've got the neighbours writing in, and then most of them are retirees are the ones that write in. They're the ones that
people
have got
with time and money
Yeah.
and the ability and time, the resources to exert influence. And why would you bother writing in? Why would you bother doing all of this stuff? Well, because it impacts your property prices. Right, it really does. If you're a row of single, family homes on a street versus a street which is peppered with blocks of 60 apartments, like that will affect your property values. And so I understand why the people on those streets are resistant to that kind of development because, it directly impacts how much money you're worth on paper. And I understand why you wouldn't be, necessarily a fan of that happening. But I think we as a society need to come to grips with what are you willing to sacrifice, right? We can't just urban sprawl. This is what we've done for generations in Melbourne is we've just expanded outward and we've gone outward and outward and outward. And that's worked fine for us for the last half a century, but you really can't keep expanding any further outward. Like Melbourne and Sydney are famous internationally for being these very large sprawling cities.
Bigger than London, kind of crazy.
Significantly much larger. It wasn't until I went to the United States when I saw how small their cities are comparatively that I realized how unusual Melbourne and Sydney are, these endless sprawling suburbs. The idea that it could take you 4 hours to cross from one side of the city to the other, depending on when you leave in the day and traffic, is not normal. Like in America, that would be 3 cities. You have Seattle, and then Seattle is this it's here, and then you have Mercer Island, and Mercer Island is its own city. And then you go off Mercer Island to the other side, and that's Bellevue, and Bellevue is its own city. I was just these would be 6 suburbs in Melbourne. You know what I mean? But that's not normal. It is more normal to have sharp delineations as to what is where, because you need to divvy these things. It's not normal to just expand outwards forever. It is, you need to build upwards to a certain extent, to have a downtown, right? To have a CBD, which is located centrally, where you can have, you can get to where you need within 20 minutes. You can have a hospital. You can have groceries. You don't live in a food desert. It is normal to have all of those things close by to people. And the only way we're going to do that is if
we build up.
Some people just need to loosen their little buttholes a little bit and accept the fact that you're going to have more density in places that are closer to the city. And that means your leafy South Yarra, Malvern, those inner city suburbs are just going to be more dense, and you just need to be okay with that. It is not a sensible use of resources to have an 8-bedroom house with 2 elderly retirees living in it, taking up, 900 square meters in South Yarra. That's not a smart use of space. It just isn't. So we need to do better.
Think, Tom? What's your opinion on the situation?
I just always remember I used to live in Elstonwick in Victoria, in Melbourne, and so fairly inner city. Probably wasn't initially, like, yeah, obviously, and everything expanded further and further outwards. But essentially a similar situation to what George was talking about in Malvern, that they were proposing, like, it was already a bit of a shit fight when they upgraded our local Coles and added apartments on top of it that was quite tall. There was already people being like, "No, it's too tall," and then they were proposing, like, there's an ABC studio, I think, near there that isn't really in use anymore.
Yeah.
So I thought there was a plan to, like, knock that down and put a Woolworths in there, also with apartments over the top. And that, the whole time I lived in Elsternwick, was a shit fight. I would wander around and see signs saying,
posters,
Woolworths Towers everywhere. And I noticed, like, you saw them
streets.
Yeah, no Woolworths trucks. And I'm like, fucking hell, like, you live now in the inner city. So, like, I'm sorry, it's not a quiet suburb anymore. This is the inner city. There are trucks nearby. But also, like, the thing that really always, like, ground my gears was wandering around. Like, you'd see the occasional no trucks or whatever sign on houses, but there was one street, and it was a really fucking lovely street that was just off the major road. Every goddamn house had one. Every single one. And one of these houses, I shit you not, was like... There was a house, which was a massive fuck-off rich guy house, and then next to it was their front yard, which was as deep as the house. Like, you could have fit a whole nother house there. You could have had a cricket match in this, like, giant patch of grass that is a stone's throw away from the major road. I'm like, in what universe do you still think this is a quiet suburb anymore? And, like, yeah, okay, some trucks might go down... like the main road, they're not going to come down fucking George Street or whatever it was that was like a small little suburban one full of fucking roundabouts. Like, and also I could see those signs in the local businesses. Like seeing like Stop the Towers and all that sort of stuff in some local businesses.
It's so funny because the local businesses would be the chief beneficiaries of a bunch of additional consumers being right there in their neighborhood, which is crazy.
Because I mean, sure, like a lot of like the independent grocers or like the deli and all that sort of stuff, like sure they might be like feel more squeezed by the fact that there's another major supermarket chain nearby.
Yeah, but you also have 2,000 consumers living on top of you now that can now access your products. Like,
yes, yeah. Like we often went down to the specialist deli rather than the one in the Coles and all that sort of stuff. But then also there's like restaurants and like you guys have seen the shopping strip near where I lived. Like it was.
It's busy. It's pandemonium on a Saturday.
It's wonderful. There's bars everywhere and like all that. Like, wouldn't they want more people around where that's your local suddenly? But they were protesting it. It was like, are you just doing that so as the old people who keep coming by to buy you shit don't yell at you?
Like, you got to remember though, they probably are people who live in the suburb as well. They're probably the same people that if you look down the street, they own a house with a sign out the front of it saying, you know, some of them are the same people, right? The business has been there for a while.
I'm rich and I want to stay rich, but I don't want to be more rich. Not too rich with more people.
It's all about what are you willing to sacrifice for equality? What is it that you are willing to give up? Are you willing to give up having a little bit more noise during the school day to have other people have affordable houses? And I think for the 60% of Australian people who are homeowners, the answer is nothing. I'm willing to give up nothing, which is why we've had so little progress on this issue. Like
it's ground down over the last 30 years because the government stopped building things and then
because conservatives and neoliberals hollowed out and outsourced and sold off various functions of government in order to, you know, turn a surplus. Look how good our shiny new surplus is. Didn't you sell the State Electricity Commission? Didn't you sell a bank, our national bank? Shh. Look at our beautiful surplus. Look how it glows in the nighttime.
Wait. Let me play Back in Black another time.
Yeah. And so we've created a state which doesn't really function to serve the best interests of the common good. And so I think we are having a bit of an awakening now where people sort of look around and they go, oh, a house probably shouldn't cost $2 million given that I make $65,000 a year. That doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't, and I think as millennials increasingly come into positions of power over the next sort of next decade or two, I think we will see a politics that is that tends trends towards more equality, because I think millennials, having been the victims of what I would term as intergenerational theft from the boomers that have just sucked up all the value into and pulled the ladder up after them. Thanks for the free education. Thanks for the free healthcare, free everything. I'm just going to roll the ladder up behind me, and you guys get none of that. Millennials are particularly geared towards considering the needs of others, and considering the realities of climate change and the world that we're going to be living in for the next 40 years, whereas the boomers are just happy to cash checks and happy with 5% interest rates on their bank account for their safe money, which is not being inserted back into the economy and creating any additional productive capacity. They're just happy to live off the fat until they die. But once they die, like, a lot of that wealth is going to move down to the next generation. And it's going to be Gen Xers, it's going to be millennials. We've got a much more developed sense of the group and of, group
social
equality.
Conscious is what you're talking about.
So social consciousness, what it means to live in a society that is more just. And so I think hopefully we're likely to see a politics that is much more compassionate about these sorts of issues, where millennials in particular are willing to give up something of our own in order to, for the greater social good. And I know that sounds a little bit like communism, and Alan Joyce just had an aneurysm somewhere, but or Alan Jones either, really. But it's, that's what we need to do. Something needs to be given up by someone in order for it is a finite resource. Housing. There is a certain amount of land in a certain amount of places that are close to city centers. Like, someone needs to give something up in order for this to progress and get better. And it just seems like boomers aren't going to do it. Sorry, go on.
What's up, Tom?
I was going, did George just become the optimistic one?
Well, just a little bit optimistic.
Be like, oh well, as millennials come more into it, we'll create a more just society and it'll be great. Like, did George just become the optimistic one, not Adam with the let's see, let's give him a bit of benefit of the doubt. Like, George was like, here's my hopeful speech. Yes, we can.
Let me caveat all of that with only by boomers dying and millennials inheriting that wealth. Because there's no boomers left to hold it. Will we achieve that kind of political clout and economic power? And by then it'll be far too late to stave off the oncoming climate crisis. So if you describe that as optimistic, that's up to you. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but
there's the George we all know and love.
There he is.
And the meek will inherit the earth. So moving internationally, because we've talked about that for far too long, there's been a bit of a situation in Canada over the last fortnight, and it is getting explosive. So there was an assassination in Canada of a Sikh leader called Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Now, he was effectively murdered in the street. He's a Sikh leader of a local temple there. He's also someone who is, I guess, part of the Sikh independence movements, which, for reference, we talked about it probably several months ago on the show, where they, I guess, campaigning for a self-governing state within India called Khalistan. The Indian government regards a lot of these people as terrorists and describes them openly as terrorists.
Separatists. So they want to create their own state within a portion of, sort of separate from India. So
the Indian press release has been just using the word terrorist.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Canada effectively received intelligence allegedly from one of the Five Eyes organization. So that's, I can't remember exactly who, Australia, the US, I'm assuming the UK.
Yep.
Probably Japan and someone, I don't know, I can't remember the other two.
Canada, the UK, and New Zealand. As well as India. India's in the Five Eyes as well, I think.
Well, anyway, allegedly someone
hang on. Australia, US, Canada, UK, and New Zealand. That's
New Zealand, yeah. Someone from the Five Eyes tipped off Canada, and Trudeau in the Canadian Parliament the other day basically accused India outright of interfering with causing the murder, basically.
Well, I mean, two masked gunmen murdering a political leader in the street. It's like, it has the whiff like it's certainly got a soupçon of political assassination, about it.
It makes you look at the Russians and go, oh, at least they're a bit more subtle about it.
With their plutonium poisonings.
Yeah.
With their Novichok.
Or, falling to your death out of a 5-story window.
He was a slippery oligarch, okay? He was oiled up, okay? No one knows what he was doing on the top of that weather vane, okay?
And effectively what's happened is there's been a bunch of, because the UN General Assembly met this week, and a bunch of people have come out and said, we would like to say that the situation in Canada is concerning. And Penny Wong, Australia's foreign minister, got up and basically said that that she wasn't particularly happy about it. And there are, I guess, rumors that have been sort of floating around that Canada asked for support from other Five Eyes members to sort of, well, you gave us this intel, so could you please back us in with the public statements that we've been saying?
Yes, it's like, hey, those the ones who gave us the intel. Could you, reiterate the intel?
I'm not gonna say who it was, but it sounds like Brew Beeland. Help us out here, Jacinta.
So allegedly that's not why Penny Wong made a statement. It's just because she likes
not in charge anymore.
No, I know.
Sorry, just throwing that out there.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for clarifying.
You're welcome.
Ruining the joke. So anyway, basically, since this has all happened, India and Canada have expelled each other's diplomats. They are suspending negotiations on various things. It's really, and they're meant to be allies, by the way. Like there's this whole thing where they need India to try and curtail China from
here's the thing is that
power thing.
Trudeau came out real confident, okay, being like, "You're fucked with the wrong colony, baby. Okay, Canada's coming out firing. We're not sorry this time. Pow, pow, pow." And then sort of turns around to all the allies and goes, "You're going to back me up, right?" And all the Five Eyes sort of countries are going, "Yeah, India's really important as part of our China policy right now. So we're not looking to make any enemies. So if you could just chill."
The Indian foreign minister said claims were aimed to divert attention from the Khalistani terrorists and extremists sheltered in Canada.
It's so funny though, because it's like
it's wild. They're claiming Canada is sheltering terrorists.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess they see them that way, but it's so funny because it's like, so there was a large contingent that immigrated to Canada from the Sikh community, and there is, they were organizing a referendum around Sikh, independence and things like that. But these were all really extremely, very symbolic gestures because being a referendum held in another country has no legal power whatsoever. It's really more of a symbolic thing. It's more about rallying community and sort of getting, having that sense as an expat community of that, rallying around a common cause. As to whether it was actually going to have any kind of real effect as to what was happening in India, doesn't seem like it. But obviously you got to remember Modi is very much a nationalist. This Hindu identity is a big part of the Indian nation and how he projects power and how he sees the country going. And so someone who's someone in another country claiming to, annex part of your country, I guess you would see them as a terrorist, but to assassinate someone
on foreign
soil, on a allied country's foreign soil is completely fucking outrageous. And I don't think there's any real doubt that it was India who ordered the hit. I mean, who else has the resources to send 2 masked gunmen to assassinate a Sikh leader, or who would have the resources or the interest to go and do something like that? So,
I mean, it's definitely, it might not be the Indian government. It's not like they sent, their employees, over there. It's probably an arms, there'd be they hired someone who hired someone else to do it. But yeah, as you said, there's not many other people that would really have any interest.
Unless someone wants to make India look bad. I don't know. I've watched too many.
Well, I mean,
some 12D chess you're playing there, Tom.
Chess from China.
That's the new season of Jack Ryan. We're bringing it back. Friend of the show, Polyverse, has written in, I know it's bad for my mental health because it involves Canada, and I can't help but wonder because it involves Canada, I can't help but wonder what insane opinion Jordan B. Peterson might have about it. And he would say, it's no joke. No, I'm serious. It's no joke.
I don't know. He villain monologue again into a camera. I don't know.
About the woke mafia coming after.
Yeah. I mean, when he fell for that whole thing of like weird sperm farms out of China, that was pretty funny. So maybe he'd have some batshit insane thing to say about it.
No doubt.
Indeed. Now we better leave that one as well, because do we still want to go through the rest of the 3 stories for the week?
No, I don't think the audience is keen to hear about Australia's per capita recession. I think I knew when I posted it that wasn't going to make it to the final cut, but I think it's important. We'll put it in the show notes. But there's a great sort of little story from Macro Business which talks about how like we're sort of in a technical recession already based on like the growth and the number of people that have come in. You know, it's like, yes, we've had some growth, but you know, if there's a hell of a lot more people, it like doesn't count as much because per person, the amount of money that we've got is shrinking. So yeah, it's an interesting little piece and we'll link it in the show notes, but I'm not spending any time on it. Because every 3 months, a Queenslander gets killed by a crocodile. We'll talk about John Fetterman. We'll finish on Mr. John Fetterman. So, for those who don't,
who's John Fetterman?
John Fetterman is the senator for the state of Pennsylvania over in the US. And unfortunately, he was diagnosed as having had a stroke a couple of months ago, and it's been a very long road to recovery for him. Luckily, it actually happened prior to his election, I think, and he was running against Dr. Oz. I think we might have talked about that. You remember from TV?
Yeah.
So he was running against Dr. Oz, successfully won, even having had a stroke, but it's been several months since then. He's required a lot of sort of disability help in terms of like getting over the stroke and like text-to-speech stuff and all this sort of stuff to help him perform his job effectively. Anyway, seems like old mate's doing a lot better. As of recently, which is great, which is fantastic, and we need him in the Senate to stop the Republican House of Representatives from just completely exercising their batshit Hunter Biden, Lauren Boebert getting a tit grab during Beetlejuice fever dream that they.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Did you hear about that story?
I did.
Lauren Boebert was just had a crazy time at a Beetlejuice concert in Denver, Colorado, and that made international headlines. So that was good fun. Anyway, we need people like John Fetterman in the Senate, and it seems like he's doing well, which is all good. There has been a photo of him that he tweeted on Twitter where he lost a bet with his son Carl and had to sport this mustache. Now, he's a very distinctive looking guy, John Fetterman, 6'7", 270 pounds, big dude, very distinctive dude. But in this photo, he does look a bit different, right? With his famous goatee shaved and a sort of I don't know, what sort of mustache would you describe that as? Like a thick, like a Burt Reynolds mustache, right?
Yeah. It's like Magnum PI.
Magnum PI, yes, perfect example. So he does look very different, and
I barely recognized him.
He looks different. I was
like, oh yeah.
Anyway, there was a bunch of wackadoos on the far right that have basically said John Fetterman has been replaced. He never recovered from that stroke, in fact, and he's been replaced with a body double who's a different person and is not the same guy, doesn't look anything like him, and he's a clone.
Yeah, because
either a body double or both.
It's not important.
That is much more believable and much more plausible than the man grew a mustache.
And put some glasses on as well.
Yeah, it's like, did he grow a mustache? Or deep state conspiracy, they replaced him with a clone?
Well, there's an excellent article
one of these things is way more plausible than the other.
There's an excellent article from the Washington Post, which basically talks about how mathematically unlikely it is that you would be able to find another person like John Fetterman in America. There's a great graph, which basically has, so it's a sampling It's like, okay, being 6'7", 6'8" is like real tall. That's extremely tall.
So tall.
There's not that many white men in their 50s in America that are 6'7", 6'8", and 270 pounds, which John Fetterman is. So it's like mathematically impossible to find a white 50s John Fetterman looking ish guy who also meets those dimensions in America. Like, that guy does not exist. It is amazing that John Fetterman exists.
Yeah.
Given his unwieldy dimensions, he should not exist according to math. So the idea... Yeah, go on, sorry.
Sorry, just that journalist being like, all right, so today I'm writing a piece disproving that they've body doubled a senator. Like... Oh my God. Like, there's fucking more important shit to be going on here. But no, I'm going to bash out 2,000 words.
It's a great piece. It was like really funny and insightful using math and data to be like, this is not possible to have replaced. He is a very difficult person to try and body double and get rid of. Like, and I love that the Washington Post we'll put the link in the show notes. But yeah, just such a funny piece. Basically saying like how mathematically impossible it would be to do this with someone like John Fetterman. And if they were going to body double someone, don't you think they'd do Dianne Feinstein or, Mitch
McConnell?
Mitch shit his pants.
Have to say anything.
Mitch shit his pants McConnell. Yeah, so I just thought it was a funny little conspiracy theory to end on. It just goes to show how like absolutely fucking fever dream the American psyche has become. Like, I wonder, is it just Americans, or is this like our entire media environment and diet is just completely poisoned at this stage?
Question, George. It's a big question.
How do people genuinely believe this, or is this just like an online joke that's been circulating and everyone's like, oh, I believe it, wink, wink, or is it kind of like, do people actually?
At a certain point, what's the difference?
So Terrence K. Williams really kicked it off in September when he tweeted a picture of the two guys side by side saying it was like, this is not Fetterman, it's a different guy. It's like his official like Senate portrait versus, a photo of him just taken candidly. Like, of course they're going to look different, but anyway.
I swear we also had other times where there was the meme was that there was a photo of someone where we're like, that's not the same person. And I'm fucking trying to remember who it was.
Oh, it was Melania Trump.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That was it.
In all fairness, that really didn't seem like Melania Trump.
No, that really didn't. I was on that conspiracy train.
There's a difference between us joking about it.
Yeah, it's a joke versus being like, no, I'm certain that John Fetterman has been cloned.
But also, I was fairly certain it seemed like Melania had been replaced. But Melania is not a 6'8", 200-pound white man in his 50s.
270
pounds. Statistically impossible to find.
Yeah. So he says, John Fetterman tweeted, big thanks to my body double Senator Guy Incognito for taking hallway questions for me, which is hilarious. I love that he's just leaning in to this whole thing. And he said, yeah, if I'm willing to save democracy and wear a suit, because there's been a whole controversy this week about how the dress code rules in the Senate have been changed.
Yeah.
As like American right-wing media is just like frothing into insanity over it. Like, it's an even bigger deal than that time Obama wore a tan suit. Like, it's just like they're all just losing their minds over the decorum. How can we possibly ever recover? And it's like, meanwhile, Tommy Tuberville is like holding up the entire Senate nomination process for the military. It's like, and so John Fetterman's like, hey, if Tuberville fucking shuts his big dumb yap, I'll save democracy and put on a suit so we can get our military working again. Clearly the suit is the biggest thing that's preventing democracy from flourishing. The fact that John Fetterman wears a hoodie, that's the biggest thing that's stopping the world from progressing.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God, right wing everywhere have lost their minds over that whole dress code thing. I saw some tweet from what's his face, Caleb Bond or whatever, like that fucking dipshit. He does like Andrew Bolte style think pieces or whatever.
Well, think pieces would be a bit of an oxymoron, but yeah.
Well, I guess he had thoughts and he wrote them down. I guess they're not good thoughts. But yeah, said something along the lines of like, that, sneakers and shorts in the office or whatever, or in bloody Congress, the West has fallen. I think was the quote that I got from that. And I was like, oh my God. And everyone's just been sharing photos of him being like, yeah, I'm not listening to you. Like, he looks like a real dipshit. Anyway.
The West has fallen. Meanwhile, they're like, because the Republican House is like so far up its own asshole trying to make Hunter Biden a thing. Like, we're looking at a government shutdown coming up. Like, it's just like the Republican Congress in the House is so just completely dysfunctional that they cannot make things go. And as a result, they might get a government shutdown where Kevin McCarthy needs to like try and partner with Democrats in order to like keep things going. The whole thing is just a mess. And yet the right-wing media ecosystem is all like, you see this fucking John Fetterman guy who's wearing shorts? It's an outrage. It's like, what about the outrage of a government that refuses to run itself despite its constitutional obligations? Shouldn't you be reporting on that, Fox News? Fox News says, no, we're going to report on the clone situation instead.
Yeah, Fox News says, let's get the guy who claims he fucked Obama back on the air.
Yeah, real story that happened. Real guy claiming that he had gay sex with Obama, and Tucker Carlson was like, what was Obama's dick like? Like, just like fully serious, 100% serious. Just be like, and tell me, when Obama smoked that crack pipe, what was his intention? Like,
that was absolutely
lost their minds. America has lost its mind.
This is the whole central thesis of Don't Look Up, right? Is that movie?
Well, I mean, I kind of felt like that was more an allegory about climate change, right? It's,
but it's the same. It's the same symptomatic thing. Yeah, right. Of just like, there's this big thing here happening, but don't worry about it. We're going to talk about it.
The media ecosystem and the way that we report on science or whatever is so broken that even when faced with an immediate challenge that is very, very life-threatening, we are, as a society, incapable of taking it seriously and responding in a timely manner. Even when warned many, many years in advance that something's going to happen, we still are just like constitutionally incapable of dealing with it at this point, which is an accurate, if horrifying, and critique of America and indeed the rest of the planet. On that happy note, we have been, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and mother flippin' TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, TikTok, YouTube, things at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
And please don't follow me to the bathroom because I really have to wee.
Is that why you've been giving me the wrap-up sign? Okay, I understand. His mouth is laughing, but his eyes are screaming. Thanks for listening, guys. We love your faces. We'll see you next week. Oh, and he's gone.